tonight, as Israel works to defeat Hamas in Gaza.
The testimonies are very, very important for those days and next generation as well.
A mission to preserve the memories of Israelis who survived the October 7th terror attack for the sake of history. Plus, inflation in America. We have the latest on the U.S. economy and unemployment. And
when you're too afraid to go out your front door, to go out at night, that's a problem.
how one Virginia program is using early intervention to prevent violent crimes. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. While Israel continues to battle Hamas, new details emerging about October 7th. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Faith Nation. From CBN's headquarters in Virginia Beach, I'm Wendy Griffith. Today, the IDF released its first official probe into Israel's failure to protect civilians who were slaughtered by Hamas on October 7th. The community of Kibbutz Be'eri was hit the hardest that day. The investigation found the IDF's lack of warning, coordination, and poor communication left residents to fend for themselves for hours. In that community alone, 101 Israelis were killed, 30 taken hostage, 11 are still in Gaza, their fates unknown. While negotiations for a ceasefire and hostage deal continue, Israel is collecting the testimonies of all those kidnapped on October 7th. Their firsthand accounts are being filmed and will eventually be kept in the National Archives. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl reports from Jerusalem.
Hamas kidnapped Mirav Tal and also took the body of her long-term partner Yaakov Tal on October 7th.
I saw Yahya outside the house, sitting on his knees, and two terrorists were holding him by his sides. He was with his back to me. They were holding weapons, and he yelled at me, "I'm going to die." And I'm on a Vespa, and I told him, "Don't resist." One who was sitting was holding a knife to my neck. They brought me down from the Vespa. Someone hits me on the head. I almost lost consciousness. I was getting ready to take a shower. Then he told me, "You take a shower. When you finish, you don't wear your clothes. I'm coming to check you out if you have a chip in your body."
That's just one of dozens of testimonies that's part of the government press office project.
The GPO took footage and testimonies from all the hostages that arrived in the first period a few months ago to make sure that, first of all, the foreign media will exactly know what is going on in Hamas horrible activities that they do in the jails, but also for the next generation, that people are ignoring, people forgotten.
GPO Director Nitzan Chen stresses the importance of recording the personal first-hand stories for documentation and authenticity.
So just imagine if even today, 6 months after the massacre, some people, even the Secretary of the UN denied that there was abuse against women at the jail. Just imagine what will happen 10 years from now. People will ignore, deny that there was some rape in October 7th, there was murder in October 7th. Therefore, the testimonies are very, very important for those days and next generation as well.
Journalists met some participants during a preview of the film, which will eventually be stored in the National Archives.
There were shouts of Jew, Jew in Arabic. They broke in screaming and shooting, bullet marks on the door. We understood my husband was shot. He was lying on the floor with his hands up. This was all in front of our eyes.
At Kfar Aza, terrorists abducted Chen Goldstein Almog and 3 of her children. They also murdered her husband and oldest daughter.
Then I ran to check on Yam, and I see that she was shot in the face, and I just saw this for a few seconds. It was a shocking sight. Something got opened right here, and blood was coming out of her head. Such a convulsion. She was half passed out. I was simply stunned, in shock, and I was asking myself, is what I'm seeing right now really happening?
Malki Shem Tov is the father of 21-year-old Omer, still a hostage after being kidnapped from the Nova Festival.
I saw him already more than 7 months. I terribly miss him. And if he hear me, I want to tell him that we do everything to bring him back home. Him and all the other hostages. Omer, just wait for us.
70-year-old Louis Har, kidnapped along with his friend Fernando Simon Marman, has a different story. The IDF rescued them in February.
Suddenly, I heard boom, and then wild shooting began and someone grabbed my leg, pulled me down and said, "Put your head down." He said, "Luis, we are the IDF. The IDF. We came to take you home." From that moment, that's it. I was in their hands. It gave me so much confidence.
Louis told CBN News the most important priority is to bring the hostages home.
We didn't lose our hope, and I hope that no one here loses his hope, because this is the last thing that needs to happen. We need to be strong in order to do everything to bring the hostages home.
He says being in captivity convinced him that belief in coexistence just is impossible.
Many of the captors said to me, they don't think we should be here. There shouldn't be a land of Israel. There should only be Palestine. That says that we don't have a partner for peace because they teach their children this from the time they're born. They only value hatred, to buy a weapon, and to kill the Jews. That's what they know.
Moshe Or's brother, Avi Natan, was kidnapped along with his girlfriend, Noah Argamani, whose mother has terminal brain cancer. Moshe hopes the free world will pressure Hamas in any way possible to free the hostages, because not doing so sends a dangerous message.
What will the terrorists all over the world will see and learn? They will learn that by taking hostages, civilians hostages, they can have benefits or earn something in the political field. Imagine yourself what will happen in terrorists in the USA. They will try, okay, if they will want to get something in the political field, they will take hostages.
With Israeli hostages still in Hamas captivity, the issue remains a top priority for Israel. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Julie. President Joe Biden announced a new $225 million air package for Ukraine at today's NATO summit, including a Patriot missile system to defend against Russian airstrikes.
Will not prevail in Ukraine. Will not prevail in Ukraine. Ukraine will prevail. And I want you to know we're going to be with you every step of the way.
Biden is hoping to project strong leadership in front of world leaders as Democrats raise serious concerns about his chances for re-election in November. The president is scheduled to hold a high-stakes news conference tonight at 6:30 Eastern Time. Turning now to efforts to free 11 pastors and ministry leaders in Nicaragua.
Gosh, I feel terrible.
The group held mass evangelism campaigns last year to spread the gospel under the U.S.-based ministry Mountain Gateway. After the Crusades, they were imprisoned and convicted on money laundering charges. The government gave them prison sentences ranging from 12 to 15 years and $80 million in fines per person. The ministry vehemently denies the allegations, and religious freedom advocates call the trial a sham and persecution. Representative Barry Moore from Alabama joins us now. Representative Barry, you've been such a vocal supporter of these pastors. Earlier this year, you introduced a resolution condemning their imprisonment. Can you give us an update on how they're doing and what is the status of their case right now?
Well, as we know right now, Wendy, they're still in prison, and we don't think they've had fair legal representation. And this is a ministry that's been working in Nicaragua for 30 years, and they've done a number of disaster relief programs, food, jobs, you name it. This ministry has been an impact in Nicaragua, and so we're in the fight. You know, we're trying to make sure that freedom of religion around the world is protected, and so we're in the process of getting the resolution, trying to get more support and to hopefully get our ministers freed and get them back out to sharing the gospel.
And Representative Moore, like you said, they've been there for decades. Why do you believe these men are being targeted now?
So I think I've got friends who support this ministry from Alabama, and they were sharing videos with me earlier this year before any of this happened about the movement in Nicaragua, the hundreds of thousands of people that were coming to these crusades. And it's like a movement of the Lord recently because they were just getting this incredible following, people coming to the crusades, coming to Christ. And I think in some ways, those large numbers, those people showing up for those crusades, coming to Christ, made the Nicaraguan government maybe a little nervous. You know, Christ is about freedom and the opportunity to worship and that sort of thing. And I think in some ways when government likes to control people, I think it made them a little nervous.
Yeah, and before their arrest, what kind of impact were they actually having on the communities there in Nicaragua?
I think it was incredible. They had created jobs. They were actually harvesting coffee. They had got them a process down there where they had farms, and these were local people from Nicaragua, citizens who were harvesting coffee, sending the beans over to the U.S. to be roasted. And so that was creating more and more jobs, and it allowed them to put the money back in the ministry. Like I said, this is 3 decades they've been doing this. This is a surprise to many of us, but I think as that process, as that ministry began to flourish and some of the pastors began to unite with a message of Christ, I think the government got a little nervous. There were a lot of people showing up at these crusades. The videos, like I said, were quite incredible of the people praising the Lord, serving the Lord, and coming to the Lord. And I think that made the government a little nervous.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt. Well, you've called on Secretary of State Antony Blinken to get involved. What do you believe the Biden administration should do and can do to secure their release?
Well, I think part of the problem is the administration is not as well, they're not plugged into religious issues around the globe like they should be. And obviously, I think the government around the globe, the American government, is not well respected or is at least feared to have a say. They're more feckless now. And so we'd like for the administration to do more. They're not doing what they can. We do have a resolution. It's Resolution 1019 that have bipartisan support. We have 4 Democrats and a number of Republicans on. And so I would encourage the members, y'all have an incredible reach to the Christian community, to call their members of Congress and say, please join this resolution that Barry Moore has from Alabama. We're trying to get these people freed and get them back into ministry. What's happened to them is a travesty of justice. And like I said, they haven't had fair legal representation. The Department of State, we've met with them. We continue to put pressure. I'd like to see some sanctions maybe imposed if the Nicaraguan government does not make a move.
Yeah, our prayers definitely, Congressman, for a breakthrough very soon. Representative Barry Moore from the great state of Alabama, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Wendy.
Coming up, new numbers show inflation is cooling. What that means for your wallet when we return. Welcome back. Inflation cooled in June, according to the latest information from the Labor Department. This morning's report shows the Consumer Price Index rose 3% from a year ago. That's less than the 3.1% increase predicted by economists. Earlier this week, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell testified to Congress that the economy is expanding at a solid pace. Excuse me. And with that, let's bring in Mark Hamrick, Washington Bureau Chief and Senior Economic Analyst for Bankrate. Mark, inflation eased more than expected in June. We saw gas prices fall, but food prices are still going up. What does this cooling off mean for the average American?
Good to be with you. Yes, food prices are up 2.2% from a year ago, but we've seen 2 straight months of declining gasoline prices. And so the mix of price movements is moving more to the favor of consumers. But I want to also align myself, I think, with the experiences of people watching out there to note that price levels broadly remain elevated. And so the consumer price index compared to the time before the pandemic, up about 20%. And so that means that about 1/5 of our buying power has been eroded. The good news here, though, is that it does appear as if we are seeing price declines in the goods category. And of course, many people would like to see more of that. We don't want to see prices plummeting, however, because that is the kind of behavior that's typically associated with a severe economic downturn. And so we don't wish for a severe recession in order to get lower prices, because that would also be associated with higher unemployment.
Yeah, it's such a balancing act. But the good news is gas prices are down, and we definitely needed that. But can you tell us, why are food prices still going up? And when might we get some relief at the grocery store?
Well, if we think about how many products are within the confines of a grocery store, whatever size that store might be, I happen to shop at one that has a very large footprint. There are a lot of price movements within that store. And so, for example, one area where we're still seeing very elevated prices is the price of beef. There are problems with beef supply. We have, herds that are located in areas that have suffered through drought and extreme heat, and it's hard to raise cattle under those those conditions. So back to supply and demand. Elsewhere, we're reliant on essentially global food supplies within the context of all the things that we get within a grocery store. And so they are reliant also on, for example, transportation costs. And so now that we're seeing some relief with gasoline prices, perhaps we'll see other transportation costs going down. And of course, you also have bad weather in various locations across the country, whether it's floods, heat waves, as has been the case. It could also be drought. And so we're very much, at risk of suffering high food prices for any varieties of reasons. But broadly speaking, for inflation, the outlook is looking better.
All right. Well, if the Federal Reserve cuts interest rates, which they're expected to do, and of course they're at record highs right now, what criteria will have to be met first, and what would this mean for consumers?
The Fed meets later this month. It's not expected to make a rate move then, but investors and economists alike are betting the Fed will cut rates in September. We'll get some more guidance about that in a couple of weeks. What the Fed really needs to see is more positive news on inflation on both a month-over-month basis and essentially by extension a year-over-year basis. And so we'll be watching that data very carefully. It also does not want to see the unemployment rate spike like we discussed before, because it needs to promote two parts of its mission, and one of those is maximum employment.
I'm sorry, Mark, we're out of time, but I think you were done. Perfect timing. All right, Mark Hamrick, Washington Bureau Chief and Senior Economic Analyst for Bankrate. Thanks so much, as always.
Thank you.
Up next, the program that's fighting violent crime in Virginia will take you inside Operation Ceasefire after this. Welcome back. Violent crime is rising in cities across our nation. A new program in Virginia emphasizing early intervention is helping young people stay on the right side of the law. Tara Mergener has details.
State Attorney General Jason Miyares launched Operation Ceasefire less than 2 years ago in Virginia cities with high rates of gun-related offenses. Since then, nearly all of those participating have seen a downturn in crime, a trend Miyares says benefits the entire state. From shootings and armed robberies to vicious assaults, a number of urban areas across the United States are besieged by violence. Virginia is no exception, seeing its homicide rate steadily climbing since 2018.
When you're too afraid to go out your front door, to go out at night, or to go out to a restaurant or dine or visit with your friends, that's a problem.
People in Hopewell, south of Richmond, felt that way as they experienced a crime spike affecting nearly every corner of their community.
The black SUV he was pursuing fired shots at that deputy.
From its streets to its schools.
In 2022, we saw about a 76% increase in crime, specifically violent crime, overall major crime.
We have seen just horrific increases in that type of behavior. Our last school year, we lost 6 children from the age of 8 to 18 to gun violence and crime.
We supposed to be planning birthday parties, not funerals. This is crazy to me.
In response to this epidemic, Attorney General Jason Miyares resurrected a crime-fighting approach that first saw success 20 years ago in Richmond. He took Operation Ceasefire to more than a dozen of Virginia's high crime areas in 2022 and insists it's working.
Well, Operation Ceasefire is both early intervention, making sure that young people have a path other than joining gangs, but also if you cross that line, you're committing violent crime. We have our ceasefire prosecutors that are going to prosecute and hold these people accountable.
What makes this program unique is its focus on prevention.
We know people who are committing violent crimes. We have to stop them. It's not just about lock them up and throw away the key.
To reach these communities, Hopewell authorities take the extra step of partnering with a local nonprofit, such as Real Life. Once police identify likely offenders and potential victims, members of the groups Project Safe, Alive, and Free step in.
We send an officer, a community member, and our project coordinator with Real Life to the people that we want to custom notify, and then Real Life takes over from there and builds those relationships and works with that person or that group to try to prevent any type of future violence or any type of retaliatory shootings.
Also, it's called a custom notification, and so it is our life coach. It's somebody from law enforcement. We talk with teachers, the football coach, the probation. So we really have a big picture of this person.
Advocates, some who've turned away from a life of crime, show that change is possible.
We can get together and talk to the gang leaders, the gang members, talk to the active shooters, the guys that's really putting in the work, and have a sit-down conversation with them to give them something other than going back to what they was doing in the beginning.
Understand that whatever you do in life is going to come back to you. If you're out there doing dirt, doing anything wrong, if somebody drops some money on the ground and you pick it up and you don't give it back to them, anything you do negative, you're going to have to pay for it. And that's a fact. But the same thing goes for when you do positive things.
Faith is also an important part of the protocol.
Knocking on people's doors, the peace walks that we do, everyone has been open and receptive. So I think it's making a small difference for the residents to know that somebody cares. Somebody is here in the community. We're not law enforcement, but we have a higher power, of course. We're faith enforcement.
Less than 2 years since the launch, early results are promising, with a significant reduction in violent crime and thousands of confiscated firearms. Hopewell stands out with a decreased crime rate of more than a third since last year, and a 71% reduction in gun violence. As of March, Operation Ceasefire has prosecuted 155 cases, resulting in more than 100 convictions and dozens of pending trials. The goal is to add more cities to the program and hopefully expand its success. And Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Finally tonight, an emotional support dog went above and beyond, rescuing her entire family from danger. Samantha Griffin adopted Luna 6 months ago to help her cope with PTSD. Luna would do more than that. The 2-year-old husky stopped Samantha from going to sleep last month when she felt a migraine coming on. Samantha felt something was wrong and took her whole family outside before the carbon monoxide detector went off. The family is thanking God Luna was there to save the day and save their lives, potentially. Good job, Luna. Well, thanks for joining us for Faith Nation today. We hope you have a wonderful day, and we will see you tomorrow. God bless.